everyone, this is Avani from Hedgecraft Heirlooms, and I'm coming to you super duper early this Friday afternoon. I know what day of the week it is, and we're going to be talking about a history of florals. And this is a topic that originally I was going to do a few weeks ago, and life kind of got in the way, and I ended up having to completely scrap the whole thing because I had somewhere else I need to be on that Friday evening. And this week my drop and my whole theme has been Green Witch, so I thought that this was the perfect opportunity to dive back into it and give the topic another go, because I was actually really excited to talk to you guys about it. And like I said, I'm really excited so we can chat about it. If you're here watching on the replay, if you could throw a hashtag replay in the comments, or if you're watching live, of course, hashtag live. It helps the algorithm reach out and find other people who might want to watch. Real quick, I'm going to open up a second tab. Should have been doing that while I was talking already, but I wasn't thinking. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to pull it up here. Unfortunately, Facebook makes it so that I can't always see comments, so this extra tab is to help make sure that I can. Here we go. Excellent. So here we are. Talk about florals. So the theme for the week that this was originally in was called Blossom and Bloom, or Sprouts and Bloom, something like that. And in the email that I sent out as part of my midweek check-in that day, share this video in, share. It's prompted me to share here as if I haven't already, so we'll just do that thing again. So in that email, usually I started including little email articles in the weekly emails. And the one that week was called Flower Magic, or what was it called exactly? Where are we? It was called Flower Magic. Alright, guess I'm right on track here. So I thought that, hey Al, I'm glad you can make it early. I was a little worried I was going to be all alone today. Glad that you made it. So I was just doing a little recap of my Flower Magic email from a couple weeks ago while we waited for folks to show up. So because we're talking about florals, and I figured Flower Magic, it all kind of fits together. And the whole Green Witch theme for the week. So flowers have sort of captured the hearts and imagination of people, of humanity, for pretty much as long as we've existed alongside them. Hey Sandra, glad you could make it. We're going to be talking about a history of florals today. I'm pretty stoked. But flowers have become really big imagery. There's a lot of symbolism behind them. There's the Victorians created an entire language of flowers that is symbolism that surrounds flowers, what they mean, what it means when you give them to people, either alone or in a group of things, which this email is not about the language of flowers, which I might do someday. In fact, I probably will, but that day is not today. But the point is, it's really, really fascinating. But I want to talk a little bit more about the flowers that are probably in your yard right now, or around this time of year. It's actually been a few weeks, so some of these things have come and gone a little bit, but it's still interesting information to kind of file in the back of your head if you ever do see them again. Usually, obviously, witchy folk, we like to use our flowers in spells and rituals, and there's a lot of flowers out there that you can use that are easily at your disposal. You don't need to worry about buying them dried or going to a store. You can literally go out in your backyard and probably pick them. So I have, how many do we have? I only have 3. So there are 3 flowers that I talked about. And the first one was dandelion. Dandelions are everywhere. Pretty little yellow flowers. Everyone knows what they are. Everyone knows what they look like. And they are wonderful. Interestingly, every single part of the dandelion plant has medicinal properties. The flower, the leaves, the stem, and the roots, which is really interesting. There's not a lot of plants and herbs that are like that. I believe that as a tea, the leaf and the root are used as an aid for digestion, liver, and kidney health. And of course a ton of other things. This is just really the abridged version here. And magically, because they resemble the sun, they are often associated with the sun, much like sunflowers. So they're considered to be really good for health, healing, vitality, and prosperity, of course. So lots of great things. And if you got my email, in fact, hey Olivia, we're here talking about the history of florals. I'm actually just talking a little bit of flower magic as an intro while we wait for people to show up. If you got the email a couple weeks ago and it's still floating around in your archives or in your folders anywhere. There was also a link to a recipe for fried dandelion fritters, which is cool. All right, so the second flower I want to talk about was violets. At the time that I wrote this, there were tons of violets in my yard. I love violets, pretty little purple wildflowers just sprouting up everywhere. Violets are really good to use in spells for protection, wish magic, peace, and healing. And the essential oil that's made with violets is actually really great for skincare, and violet syrup is said to have a mild laxative effect. Use with caution. And you can actually use it to make various cocktails, for which there was, again, a recipe in that email if you have the ability to go back and check it out. If you're wondering what email I'm talking about because you don't already get them, my VIP list gets weekly emails that has these little email articles in them, and of course announcements for everything that's going on with my business, so people can kind of keep up with me if they want to. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up at the link in my bio. It's bit.ly/VIP Heirloom Society. And then the third and final flower I want to talk about before we actually talk about the history of florals that we came here for today is forsythia, which again a few weeks ago was in full bloom in my yard, but has since it's interesting the way forsythia blooms. It blooms immediately as flowers and no leaves, and then the leaves kind of sprout and replace the flowers. So at this point, my forsythia has no flowers left on it anymore, but if you live somewhere that's colder than I am or further north than I am, yours might not have blossomed yet or might be right in the middle of blossoming. So we're going to talk about it again anyway. But forsythia is used ornamentally in a lot of suburbia, suburban America. And the flowers can be used for spells for optimism, calmness, energy, and medicinally, the fruit of the forsythia, or the seeds, can actually aid in heart health and prevent clotting, which means that it's not recommended for pregnant women. And you can make syrup with forsythia too, which has been described in various places on the internet as tasting like spring, whatever that means. So that's what I have really quickly for flower magic. Now let us talk about the history of florals. And again, if you're here watching, of course, always make sure you throw a hashtag live in the comments, hashtag replay if you're watching on replay, especially if you're on Facebook, so I can see who you are. But no matter where you are, because it helps the algorithm find other folks that want to join us. So the history of florals. So let's talk about that, because I'm really excited about this topic. I think it's really interesting. It's kind of a fun, hey, Rock's Wardrobe, we're here talking about a history of florals today, especially in textiles, so you might find this one really interesting. So the use of floral in textile in general actually originates from China. Possible in Asia. So China or Japan, no one's really sure exactly, but Asia in general. Oh yes, I am wearing the necklace because I'm talking about florals today. So, and the rest of my outfit actually isn't terrible. Oh, there's a little bit of floral in it, but the rest of my outfit wasn't very floral, so I wanted to be appropriate to the subject today. So yeah, I'm glad you got to see me wearing it. But florals, especially in textiles, but just to be used in decorations in general, because they started as a textile, started in Asia, and one of the most common motifs that was used for a specific type of flower were peonies, and it was used in kimono fabric. It was often printed on silk, and peonies were used because they represented wealth and honor. All right, Rock's Wardrobe says, just stopping in to say hi, gotta go on vacay, but saw you were live. Glad you could be here. I'm actually leaving on vacation after this, which is why I'm so early today, so you have a wonderful vacation, and I'll have a wonderful vacation, and we'll all have a great weekend. So thanks for stopping in, and take care. So peonies represented wealth and honor. I just realized I didn't wave anybody here. So, and the peonies were often, although not always, but frequently paired with the phoenix as a motif, which represented together luck and prosperity. Oftentimes royalty too, because again, we've talked about the silk in general was generally reserved for the higher kind of echelon of economic wealth within the country. And the use of floral textiles and fabrics as a pattern on clothing was first popular during the Tang Dynasty, which was 618 to 907 AD in China. So we're talking way back, but that's where it started. So from that point, the floral textiles migrated west on trade routes, probably the Silk Road, since we're talking about silk. And it became popular in Europe much later in the 19th century. Of course, at that point in time, it was new, it was novel, it was exciting, it was expensive to make. So it became a status symbol. If you were wearing florals, it meant that you had some dough that you could be, investing in things like that were otherwise frivolous. Kind of as an interesting counter to that, I think it was last November I did my color magic video on the color brown, and I talk about in that video how the color brown is actually associated with peasantry and poverty because it was the least expensive fabric, so like a solid brown taupe, burlap were associated with poverty. On the flip side of that, kind of interesting. So we were talking just now about 16 up to 907 AD. In the 5th to the 16th century, Venice, Italy, became sort of a center of fashion and trendiness and style. And at that point in time, today, hey Daniela, we're here talking about a history of florals today. So in the modern day, we, often kind of base our trends off of what celebrities are doing and what they're wearing. And sorry, I'm having some weird things on my phone. And in 5th, 16th century AD in Venice, the celebrities that they had were royalty. So if royalty wore something, it could almost immediately become a trend. Someone would see that person on a balcony, and Daniela says she loves florals. Who doesn't love florals? They're beautiful. But they were very much oh, hey Karen, hey Patience, glad you're here on Facebook. They were very much a symbol of wealth. So lace is another thing that kind of started in Venice, Italy as a fashion thing that took off because royalty were wearing it. And lace, often has floral motifs inside of it, so that kind of plays into our whole history of floral video today. And lace kind of became a really popular way to embellish otherwise plain fabrics. We were talking about that brown earlier, but otherwise plain fabrics to make them look fancier, to make them look like they were worth more than maybe they already were. And Venetian lace was especially well regarded, especially in the 16th century. And to this day, lace in particular can either represent the vixen or the virgin. You can get someone wearing white lace and have this very sort of innocent and pure kind of aesthetic. And on the flip side, you could have someone wearing a black floral lace, and they're going to be billed as the bad girl and the easy girl. That's a stupid thing that really shouldn't be like what characterizes someone as bad. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just explaining, perhaps poorly. But to this day, no matter what, whether it's someone who is innocent or someone who is not so innocent, florals and lace in particular still sort of have a tendency to represent and symbolize wealth and someone who is well-to-do. So moving on, in the 16th and 17th century, Persian textiles started really heavily incorporating florals into their fabrics that they were using for their clothing. And some of the most common motifs that they were working with were tulips and pomegranates specifically. In Persian folklore, the first tulip, the first tulip that ever existed, is said to have bloomed from the blood of star-crossed lovers, Farhad and Shirin, in a tale reminiscent of the infamous Romeo and Juliet. Hey, Mommy Ashtangi, we're here talking about a history of florals today. And according to Islamic legend, each pomegranate fruit contains one seed that is descended from paradise. So there's a lot of rich symbolism within something that seems as deceptively simple as a tulip and a pomegranate, which is really, really interesting. And a lot of these things were also woven into velvets in relief, and then from that point they were brought to Italy from the Ottoman Empire. So you have this sort of movement of things from Asia to Europe kind of, constantly. In the 17th to the 18th century, floral fabrics became big in the form of chintz in India. If you have ever been to a New Age or metaphysical shop, or even, or own already, just happen to have tapestries around, there's a very, of course, the one, I don't have one behind me today, but the florals that you often see in the made in India tapestries are effectively chintz, so they're based on chintz fabric. Clearly it's not made exactly the same, I don't think. But the word chintz actually is from a Hindi word chint, meaning spotted. So that's where you get all those kind of really smaller floral patterns. Hey, Queen Tones. So we're here talking about a history of florals today. Thank you for joining us. And real quick, for the folks that are new, just make sure you throw a hashtag live in the comments. That would be swell. It helps the algorithm find other folks that would like to join. So chintz. Europeans it's interesting. So again, from Asia all the way across to Europe, florals kind of had this rolling, influence as they moved across the continent. And people in Europe loved this Indian chintz fabric, but they could not, for the life of them, figure out how to reproduce it. And it was actually banned from import in 1680, basically because they couldn't figure out how to make money off of it. Karen was just about to ask where chintz came from. Well, glad I could answer your question for you. So, where was I? Banned. It was not... So Europeans were not able to actually reproduce chintz as a type of fabric, as far as like the way that they were getting the pattern onto the fabric. We're not able to reproduce it until the 19th century in 1759, excuse me. So that's close to 100 years later. So, just pointing out that Europeans are always number one in everything. And then moving on, so in the 18th century, European brocade fabric became really, really popular in Europe, primarily in France, but of course in Italy as well. And silk brocade often included motifs of daisies and carnations and roses. Now, brocade fabric is actually originally thought to originate from the Byzantine Empire or China, depending on who you're reading and, whatever your source is. But carnations are associated with death and rebirth and love and beauty. Daisies, innocence, purity, and happiness. And roses, love and passion, especially the pink ones. So, yeah, and a lot of those printed cottons, most of the printed cottons in that time period were floral prints, almost exclusively across the board. This is sort of the point at which it became a little less exclusive in who could afford it. And there were kind of some differences if you're really looking really closely at some kind of like older antique textiles. In the 1780s, you saw a lot of twisted stems and kind of bright colors. And then moving into the 1790s and 1800s, you were seeing a lot smaller patterns, little tiny blooms, smaller sprigs of things. And then moving into the Victorian era, sunflowers became a really popular motif. And they were believed to represent pride, appreciation, and potentially false riches, which is a really interesting thing. And of course in the Victorian era is when the language of flowers became very, very popular, which I mentioned in passing earlier. Queen Toaster says, I'm not sure if this has been said or if it's just my phone, which would not surprise me, but I'm getting a big delay between video and audio. No big deal, just thought I'd mention it. I'm not sure why that is. To me, on my phone, it just shows me recording. It doesn't necessarily... What you're seeing is actually like 10 seconds delayed from what I'm actually doing. So I'm not really sure what to tell you. I mean, I can tell you, so yesterday we had an outage with my internet, and today it's been a little spotty. So, I mean, that could be part of it. So if it's on my end, I apologize. The only thing I can suggest to try is to back out and back in again and see if that helps things line up. So the language of flowers may have actually, even though we talk about it as being the Victorian era, it actually may have originated in Persia. Some sources say it has roots in Persia and Turkey in the 15th century, where flowers replaced words, allowing people to express forbidden or socially unacceptable feelings, which that makes a lot of sense when you think about it in the context of the Victorian era, because in the Victorian era, people were really repressed and they didn't talk about anything. So having, the flowers to sort of express themselves instead of words to say things that were maybe taboo kind of made some things, I guess, a little bit easier. So that's what I have for the History of Florals today. I'm glad you guys were here and listening. I was again worried because I started this so early today that I would be all by my lonesome and people would chime in later today when I normally do, but I'm so glad you're all here. So the next thing I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to do a little sign off, because when I upload this video ultimately to YouTube later, I am going to, do I have something in my hair? Totally just had that there the whole time. When I upload this to YouTube later, I'm going to cut it from this point because everything after this is not very exciting. But I am going to be having a little live sale, including one surprise item that was not in the sale. That was earlier this week in my stories, and then free one card tarot readings for the first 6 people that claim them at the very end. So I am going to do a little sign off. If you want to be here for the live sale of the readings, hang out even after I say goodbye. I'll also be here. Aubrey on Facebook says happy birthday, Bonnie. Today is actually my birthday, so thank you very much, Aubrey. So if you're here watching, thank you so much for joining. Glad you could be here. Hang out if you're staying for the live sale or tarot readings. If you're watching on YouTube, we were happy to have you on the replay. Glad you could watch. Next week, my theme is going to be storm magic, and it's going to be a blast. So I hope you join me for that. We're going to be talking next Friday about weather magic, which is exciting. So that said, I hope you all have a wonderful long holiday weekend, and take care and blessed be.